By the time you fit in your cold ice plunge, your 5K for the day, and your ultra marathon at night, as well as eating your 6 meals during the day and all that stuff, it's a wonder how anyone actually has time to fit in guitar practice. I've seen, you see all the time stuff online about people kind of talking about being super productive and how they've, changed their lives with all this sort of habits and stuff like that. And if there's one thing that being a dad has taught me, is that you kind of have to start to adjust, unless you're going to be even more selfish than you really want to be. And so this video, I kind of wanted to talk about kind of the reality of, I think, probably what most people's lives are, instead of, I think, what, the aspiration might be, or this idea that we get from probably guys that are quite young, maybe just fresh out of uni, talking about how to, get from certain levels of guitar playing to other levels. How can we actually get better at guitar and fit stuff into a busy day, if we've actually got jobs and families and that sort of stuff.
This channel is supported by TrueFire. TrueFire is an online library of lessons from some of my favourite players. There's thousands of lessons on there. You can use the promo code JNC40 to get 40% off of any of their courses.
I actually filmed a chunk of this kind of as I was cooking dinner, so the onions and the peppers needed like 8-9 minutes. So I came up here and I kind of thought, right, let's try and do some bits and pieces. So I kind of chose a backing track and then kind of did a couple of takes over it. So I think the important thing really for me is that playing every day, even if it's not 3 hours at a time, 4 hours at a time, whatever, just daily showing up and spending some time with the guitar, for me, is super beneficial and better than not doing that, I think. This could be a really good kind of habit to have, where it's like you don't necessarily have to be super strict about it being a long amount of time, but that each day you make sure that you pick up a guitar. So at school, when I was about 14, was when I was reading sort of Steve Vai and these sorts of people that talked about having these like really long practice days and stuff like that. And obviously when you're trying to fit in school and skateboarding and stuff like that, I'd set a goal then and like a routine and a habit that I would practice for 2 hours every single day. And that kind of was what I would do. I would come home, skateboard for a bit, practice for 2 hours, and then do homework, watch TV or whatever, and then go and talk on MSN, that sort of thing. You know how it was back then. These days, I don't think it's possible to be as regimented as that, because what my job is kind of making videos, editing, recording, sending out invoices, that sort of stuff. And also then I'll have gigs at the weekend, and sometimes you might have to learn a bunch of stuff through the week. So actually, time to just sit down and practice like when I was a kid, it's just not reality anymore. But being able to sit down and just play something for an amount of time, I think, is the goal. Noodling, I would say, is underrated. And if you think of someone like Tom Bukovac, for example, or, you know, some of the kind of session players out there, I think, you know, once you get to a certain level or you get a certain job or whatever, the time that you have to actually practice your instrument kind of disappears. You might be on the road traveling a lot of the time and knackered. You might be drinking. You might be in a studio all day running sessions. I think there is a reality that at some point you just don't have as much time to practice anymore anyway. So I think don't be too dismayed at this. I think it's just natural that practice time seems to be a thing that dissipates as we grow up. So I think noodling is better than nothing. Interrupted practice time as well is better than none at all. And so what I mean by this is that if you know you've got, you know, sort of 5-10 minute window, try and get something done, try and start something. Even if your phone keeps going off, it doesn't matter as much as I think people say. Like, there is this idea that you could make better use of your time if it was completely focused, but that might not be a reality. You might not be able to just shut yourself in a room and lock it and just ignore the family or whatever, right? So even interrupted practice time, I think, has a benefit, and it's just a reality of life, probably. Equally, unfocused practice time, which I guess you could kind of think of as noodling, is still better than nothing. And I like to think of each time you sit down with a guitar as being something which is like not just about getting better or whatever, but more about enjoying the time that you have with it. And I think that's a thing that a lot of the best playing and the best players, I think, have in common, is that it appears at least that they're enjoying the time that they're spending with the guitar. If you think you like watching Julian Lage play, Jonathan Kreisberg, Tommy Emmanuel, amazing players, I think the thing that most comes across to me is that they're actually really enjoying the time they're spending on the guitar. If you never sit down with a metronome again, it probably won't matter as much as, you know, if you never sat down with a guitar again, right? If you are looking for a little bit more of a structured kind of pathway or something that can track you through a bit of a course, then I would kind of recommend TrueFire. You can use the code JMC40 to get 40% off of any of their individual courses with their great instructors like Tommy Emmanuel, Eric Johnson, Andy Timmons, Andy Wood, all of the amazing players, Robin Ford, Larry Carlton. I've been noticing Larry Carlton coming up in my YouTube ads a bit, a TrueFire lesson. I need to get into that because it's one of these things where actually reminds me of things that are important, like making simple things on guitar sound good is just as important as like making complicated things. Larry Carlton's course, 335 Motifs, I think it's called, seems like a really, really good reminder of some of that stuff. As I say, JNC40 to get 40% off of any individual course, or you can use the JNC100 code to get $100 off of their all-access masterclass, which could be a really good way to dip in and out of their thousands and thousands and thousands of lessons on there. And that could be, you know, a little spark of inspiration, like each day. Like I go, okay, I've got 5 minutes. I could jump into a TrueFire course. What can I learn today? What can I jump into for today? I think that could be a really good motivator and a really good source of inspiration. And TrueFire sponsored the channel, so that's good. There are ways that you can kind of supercharge your low value practice time. So this is what maybe noodling and just sort of unfocused practice you could think of as like low value, but it might be super enjoyable. So it's not like a thing where you're sitting down and practicing a really specific exercise. There are two ways you can do this that I can think of right now, but one is to like hone in on a certain lick. So for example, I remembered this evening that there was kind of two things that I was trying to get into my playing a bit. One was an Eric Johnson lick, and then the other was this Matthias Sasato idea. So what I was doing was just playing along with like songs like Riley Green and Ella Langley, and just trying to work these in at different tempos. But kind of that's one way of kind of supercharging the practice session a little bit, so that you're taking an idea that you've been wanting to get into your playing and working that in and out of an improvisation. So it's kind of at least trying something new or trying to get something more comfortable. And that's a really good way to do that, as well as you're actually playing along with real music, which I think to me is a lot more fulfilling than just playing along with a metronome, less taxing in a lot of ways, and probably better for your musicality to actually be playing along with records. You know, if you do get that dream job, you will be playing along with records, and that's kind of why I play along with records, right? What if instead of it just being I'm just improvising with a consistent track, what if we drop the track out? So you could quite easily do this with any backing track. Jump into your DAW and periodically remove like a bar or 2 bars and that sort of thing. And then you've basically got kind of 2 elements. You're practicing your improvisation, but you've supercharged it by also having this element of time keeping, which you're then having to maintain an internal clock whilst practicing it. I want to do more of this because it's something that I think could be beneficial, really help me to stay in time and not get flustered when you know, things drop out and stuff like that. And then that would translate to my live playing being a bit more in control of my timing. Likewise, you can do things with your off time. So say if I was driving, I could use a metronome whilst driving, sort of tap along with it, a slow metronome, do all of the kind of exercises that you could do with the guitar, but just with your hands or with your voice or whatever like that. So that's one way that I used to practice quite a lot. My timing was just in the car whilst, you know, driving along, and make use of some of that time. And another thing is that using that time whilst you're driving in a car or whatever to listen to music. I was actually listening to quite a lot of smooth country radio on the way to and from a gig the other day and found some stuff and got really inspired by it. I think that's a way to kind of level up your inspiration, but also potentially if you're needing to learn material for gigs and that sort of stuff, that's a really good opportunity for that too. Another point to make really is that if you're knowing that you're going to get interrupted, knowing that there are going to be distractions and all that sort of stuff, is to make a note of what you're going to practice and keep it somewhere, so that when you do find 5-10 minutes to grab your guitar, that you're not thinking, well, what was it that I was doing again? So this might be, you know, leaving a tab open on your Google Chrome or something, or just physically writing a note so that you've got that mental and physical note that can nudge you back into something slightly more productive, rather than you practice for like, or just play for 3 minutes and then think, actually, what was that thing I was practicing? Those are just some ideas that I've had here. I'm going to put this backing track, which drops out, up on Patreon for you guys, and check that out. I think it's really good fun and really good practice to play along with this sort of thing. And as I say, it's something that I want to do a bit more of. Just some ideas, and you know, each time that I'm doing a lick lesson every week, what you could be doing is maybe taking that lick and you think, right, I kind of like this part, and then you think, well, could I play that in other keys? Could I apply this to other songs that I'm, you know, liking to listen to this week? Figure out how to play those licks in other keys and just use it in that way, or just take one small part of a lick, and then as you're kind of noodling through the week or finding a little bit of time to play a bit of guitar, just that lick or whoever's lick, Eric Johnson's, whoever your favourite players might be, if you can work in a tiny bit of that into what is otherwise like slightly unfocused, not so managed practice, I think that's a really good thing to be trying to do. You know, or learning parts of a real song, just little manageable tasks that you can get done instead of these kind of massive lofty goals. I think that's probably, a more sensible way to approach some of this stuff, and not worry too much about, you know, every practice session needs to be this, I don't know, ultra marathon type thinking with a cold plunge at the end. Sometimes you just want to pick up a guitar and play a bit of guitar, right? I hope that's okay to talk about. It's just something that's kind of the reality of my life right now. I was chatting to a singer and just saying, you know, I don't feel like I'm as in control of things as I used to be, but it's kind of more important just to enjoy the thing, right? Probably. Catch you in another video soon. If you've got any tips for kind of finding practice time, being able to practice and balancing stuff, I'd love to know them. If you've got any thoughts in the comments. Cheers.